If you have not done so, could you please put yourself on mute? We have about 1 hour. The first half of this presentation will be 20 to 30 minutes. Troy Horton will be speaking. I will be going through the PowerPoint slideshow, and you will be recorded. Julie will be actually doing the recording here, so if you don't want to have your face on camera or whatnot, then go ahead and just take yourself off camera. And if for some reason you lose connections here, we're going to be recording it, as I said, so you can watch it afterwards, and we'll also be posting the PDF version of the PowerPoint. So I think, Julie, I'm sure there's a few people still trying to get in, perhaps. Maybe this is it. But if anyone has not met me before, my name is Ian Camacho. I am the Director of Research with Look Ahead America. I have met Troy and a few other people who I recognize on this call who are either with Look Ahead America or who are with other groups who are heavily involved in serious research. And I've come across a lot of claims that are out there regarding election integrity and about 2020, et cetera. And a lot of them I've had to parse through, and they just don't hold up to snuff. But what Troy and his group did, it's not just Troy, but a few people did. What they have found is a number of duplicate ballots that we're going to go into, and this has already been presented. So everything we're showing you is not really new. This is already kind of public record in Cherokee and Cobb, but everything that's going to go here has already been seen. And so we really want to make it more public and help the public understand, because this is something that's not really being talked about. We hear a lot of wild claims, but this will hold up. But I'm kind of rambling, so I'm going to go ahead and, before I continue on, I'm going to let Troy Horton go ahead and introduce himself and take it away, sir.
All right, great. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so my name's Troy Horton. I'm a resident of Georgia, just in Cherokee County. I've been here going 25 years or so. I'm a IT professional. I've been doing technology for more than 30 years. So pretty deep background in databases, data warehousing, data analytics, data center infrastructure, and as I started looking at this election analysis, it was surprising how well the things that were necessary fit into my skill set. I just I started looking at it as just really for myself. I built a website to try and make myself more comfortable with our republic. Just are our elections even real? You hear so many wild claims that without looking at the data, it's hard to know what's true and what's not true. And so I just got my hands dirty, digging into it, trying to figure out what happened and if everything's above board. And then also met a lot of very, very smart people that where I was weak, they were strong, and we just have made a good team. So this Cherokee analysis is kind of the first one out of the gate, because I live here, right? So I just wanted to kind of look and see what was going on in my own backyard.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Troy. Do we have anybody else trying to get in real quickly, or should we go ahead and start? Julie, I don't know if there's anyone else kind of get in. I see about 18 people so far. Otherwise, I'm going to begin the presentation. I think we've waited long enough.
Yep, go ahead and begin.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and start this up. Give me a second. Fantastic. And we're going to go to slideshow, because that's how it works. Okay, so Troy's going to go ahead and walk us through this, but this is basically what he had presented to Cherokee County. So
yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah, I've actually presented this a couple times to the Cherokee County Election Board. There's my contact information. I'm a new Twitter user, so I haven't really been on social media much. So if anybody wants to follow me, go ahead out there. On this slide is also the website, the seeforyourself.us:8080 website. The reason the 8080 is on there is just because I couldn't use the port 80, so I had to redirect people to a different port in order to make it available on the internet. And this report, as well as a couple other reports, are available at that report subdirectory on that domain. the one that I've done by far the most digging into is Cherokee County. I'm just kind of getting into the Cobb stuff a little bit deeper. I've done a little bit of stuff for Fayette, but the things that I want to talk about with Cherokee, I absolutely will stand behind. The other stuff, I'm not 100% there yet, but definitely with Cherokee.
Excellent. So go tell us about a little bit what you found in the presentation here for us. When you presented, was it just Cherokee, or was it a number of different counties, and what kind of counties were you looking at?
Well, I was able to pull all of the, get all the ballot images from all across the state of Georgia for all the counties, at least, that provided them. There was a lot of counties that destroyed their ballot images on election night. Some of the counties provided partial pictures of their ballot images, so just a portion of them. What I found is, as far as duplicates and mismatches on, voter files to who voted and things like that. I mean, I'm focusing on Cherokee County, but this is not Cherokee County is not a standout. They're not, a lot worse than other things I've seen. This is not a blue county or a red county or small or big problem. It's across the board. Some are cleaner than others, but I haven't really found something demographically about any county that says, oh, well, this one's really, really bad. Of course, the larger counties, you're going to see a bigger discrepancy just because I think the pure volume of the number of people who vote in those counties. But Cherokee's I think we had 150,000 voters, and so it's not tiny, but it's nowhere near the size of a Fulton or a DeKalb or something like that.
And it's a red county too, so that's on top of that. You're not just picking on the other side or one side, or you look at a number of things. So
yeah, and I figured there's tons of people looking at the large counties, and I just really wanted to see for myself whether I could feel comfortable for myself voting in my own county. Is it legitimate? And at least from what I've seen, for the most part, there's it's not as bad as what I feared. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so let's start getting into it now. So let's go through a little bit of your data and the definitions, because just so people can follow along.
Yeah, absolutely. All of this data is based off of public data. There's nothing that there's nothing special about it. Any of you can go out and get this data and do the same analysis I did, and I assure you're going to come to the same results of what I came to. I've had people looking at this that are vehemently opposed to any hint of there being problems with elections, trying to see were the things that I was saying legitimate, and ultimately they agreed. So we got the ballots from the county, open records requests. I got the statements of vote cast from the county as well, and then I pulled data from the Secretary of State's website, their voter history files, their voter files, as well as the absentee files. There's been some question, about dates and things of that nature. I've got voter files from back in January 2020, all throughout 2020, and up into 2022. So I've got quite a few of those to see how things changed over time. But the main point being that this is just all publicly available information.
Right. There's no hacking, anything like that. Everything is legal and above board. That's how we do it here too at LAA. Oh.
Yeah. So as we have these discussions, sometimes I'll say things that I'm used to talking about with my peers that I'm working with on this election integrity thing. One of them is MC2 or MC1. Those are just different machine counts. So MC1 would be the scanning and counting of the ballots on election night. MC2 would be the scanning and the counting of ballots during the recount. I might say RLA, which is a risk limiting audit, which is basically a sample that the state did of the votes to see how well things matched up from a statistical perspective. SOVC is a statements of votes cast. That's the formal statement from the counties that says, okay, this is what the vote results were for the county. Strays, that's a term that I use for ballots that and you'll understand how I figure this out later, but ballots that are present within MC1 or within the original count that are not present in MC2, or ballots that are present in MC2 that are not present in MC1. So there's not a reconciliation between the election night scan and count to the recount scan and count. There are different ballots there, so those would be strays. BMD, for those who are not familiar with that election word, is basically just a shorthand for the computer printed ballots. So when you go in to vote and spits out the computer printed ballots, that's a BMD. And there's a difference between scanned and counted. So a ballot can be scanned, but not necessarily included in the count. So, there is a big difference between having a duplicate or a double scanned ballot versus having a double scanned and double counted ballot. The counted ballot would be those that were included within the statement of votes cast.
And just to be clear, BMD actually stands for ballot marking device. Excuse me. So there's a difference between that and hand marked devices, and I think you kind of are going to make a case for that as we kind of go through this. Yeah. But those those are done in person at the machine. That's what the BMD is ballot marked.
And one thing to it's kind of under that BMD note, that in-person advance. So when you vote ahead of time, even though it's in person, it's considered an absentee ballot. So it's absentee in person. If you voted it, even though you voted in person before November 3rd, it's considered an absentee ballot. So just keep that in mind.
Interesting. Okay.
So this is a real important concept for how the analysis takes place. How you can say the things, or how I can say the things that I'm going to say. With some assuredness that it's accurate. So a ballot content index is a list of characters that is put together that represents what the content of that ballot is. So on the left there, looking at on election night, ballot number 15, poll pad 10, ballot ID 10, poll ID 5. You have two contests on there with votes, and down below that is what the BCI representation of that would be. So 0010 is your ballot ID, separated with a tilde, with the 005 being your poll ID, and then the first three letters of the selection in each contest following after that. So I could tell you then that the BCI for that first ballot does not match the BCI for the second ballot, and therefore, because those don't match, they are different ballots. Now, there are some things such as overvotes or things that have to go to adjudication and things like that may make a ballot appear to be different from the BCI standpoint that would require you to do a visual inspection of the ballots and figure out, are they the same or are they different ballots? But the BCI does get you 95% of the way there to determining what ballots what the votes are on the ballots, what precincts they're assigned to, whether there's a difference between the original count ballots and the recount ballots, and you can do all that en masse as opposed to having to look at images, visually.
It's shorthanded. Yeah, for example, I see 10, 5, Jam for James, and then Ben, and then you see that kind of thing. And we see that in the actual ballots themselves, the ballot contact index. So great. This is all kind of loading up. We're almost there. So now we're going to start going to the summary now. But you just need to do kind of that background just to understand, because this is pretty technical stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So some of the things that I found ballots that were double scanned and counted in the original count. So they was not just scanned and then wasn't included in the SOBC. These duplicate or these double scanned ballots were indeed counted in the election. I did find ballot images that were added or omitted between the original count and the recount.
Those are strays, right?
What's that? Yeah, those would be strays.
Yeah. Okay.
And then also an added or omitted ballot doesn't necessarily have to be a whole new ballot. It could be a modified ballot in between the election night and the recount. I found cases where the scanners were tabulating votes inconsistently. And what I really found, and probably one of the biggest problems that I found is that I really didn't have a lot of visibility. Only 75% of the image, 75% of the ballot images, there's not a whole lot you can do with them as far as a review. I did mention a simple fix to the election board that I can talk about, but 25% of the ballots were hand-marked ballots. Those are ones that I can really visually look at and tell, hey, this is a duplicate or it's not a duplicate. 75% of the ballots, the BMDs, the machine-marked ballots, if you have two people that vote the same up and down the ticket in the same precinct and has the same poll ID, those printed out ballots look identical. There's no differentiation. People are sometimes surprised to hear that the QR codes are not different between a ballot if you voted the same way. So because of that, there's really no way to tell if I look at two ballots if they're duplicates or if this is actually two people voting the same way. So I'm very hamstrung as far as analyzing 75% of the election.
And part of that's for the anonymity, I believe, of the voter. That's, I think, the justification for that.
But I had mentioned to the Cherokee Election Board about putting like a bait stamp. So let's say that you get to the end of election night, you pull out all of the ballots and you just stamp each one of them, shuffle them up or whatever to keep the anonymity and stamp them up, and then you can figure out, okay, this is how many ballots we have. These are the ballots that are missing. It would tell you a whole lot, but that didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, and sorry, for those of you who don't know, a base stamp is the stamp where you stamp it and the number advances one each time you stamp it. So that way you can tell this is number 18, 19, etc.
It's really unfortunate that these things don't. And the problem with this is this is a 5-minute programming change into the QR code to have a random number generated and encode that into QR. I mean, there has to be a reason for not doing that.
It sounds like what you're saying, though, is that point being is that hand-marked ballots are at least able to be audited. And
yes,
at best, so really what you found is only a quarter. It could you could assume possibly similar rates in the other one, but we don't know for sure. We only know about the quarter that we looked at in this. And this is only one county, by the way, not all counties. So,
right. I can't really tell much about the BMD ballot population.
Sure. Okay, so let's go into some of the specifics now.
Okay.
So you found more ballots counted than the voters who were voting.
Yes.
So you mentioned a few discrepancies in these. So you had BMDs and hand-marked. Those are the ones that you mentioned. You scanned, and obviously you didn't look through every one. You used the was it BCI, the coding to determine that?
The BCI. There's a flag as far as whether the ballot was a hand-marked image or a BMD. Okay. And I also took the voter file information, consolidating the voter history, the absentee file, and then the regular voter file. With dates that would go beyond the 60-day requirement for the Secretary of State to make sure that all people who voted got credit for voting in the system. So it's not like I'm not leaving people out. And I found in Cherokee for Election Day in person through the number list of voters, which was a document that the Cherokee County Election Board got for me, that there was 31,082 voters that voted in person on Election Day. The advanced in the absentee file, it marked 76,243. And if you subtract those two numbers from the 107,681, it says, well, there's 356 more ballot images than we have people who cast votes. Mm. And the hand-marked ballots are a similar story. Right. 37,510 absentee by mail and 322 electronic, and subtract that from the total ballot count, and you get 51 extra ballots there. So between the two, 407 extra ballots counted in the county. Now, the thing about that is, and it goes to this, is that the more you dig into the data from the county down to the precinct down to the ballot type, the more discrepancies show up. So like, for example, Hickory Flat and Air Acres are responsible for most of the extra, I'll call extra ballots, but ballots that don't have voters associated with them in those precincts. If you look at the graph, by far those two are the heavy hitters as far as having more ballots than voters. But they, although there's more, they have 435, but because some precincts have more voters than ballots, they kind of cancel each other out to some extent. And that's what I find is that if you look at things from the county level, it really doesn't tell the whole story. You have to get down to the precinct level, and it's even more eye-opening when you get down to the ballot type level. Now, the locality of the discrepancy is important. That those two high bars on the right kind of say that this isn't a systematic problem, but it's a problem in those particular precincts because nobody else seemed to have the issue. And that's something that I found in common with other counties in Georgia, that typically it looks like the bulk of the discrepancies come from one or two precincts and not across the board.
Interesting. And you found two, and these two, by the way, you found came out of Cherokee, and that was actually unintentional. You didn't plan to determine that until you were starting to look into the data, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so I did a report of all of the precincts across the state of Georgia, and I found that those two precincts, were in the top 15 as far as ballot discrepancies. Now, there's going to be a discrepancy between voter files and the ballot images. So there are people that have protected status that, that information doesn't get put in there for their privacy or safety even. But the difference is, it's not in the 300 range. Those are outliers.
And furthermore, the count should still even match, even so, even if you don't have the actual voter name, as you were kind of saying, and within you're saying the strays don't reconcile. So even if that were accountable, why do the strays between the machine count 1 and 2? So that's kind of something we're kind of getting into next. So there's all kinds of, there's not only that kind of inconsistency, there's, kind of lateral inconsistency. And it's kind of what we're getting into right here.
Yeah. So this is Hickory Flat, and the top two tables are from the statement of votes cast from election night as well as the recount for MC1 and MC2. And you see on election day, the election day in-person voters were 981 from the original count, and then there were also 981 on the recount. But if you look in the poll pad information, which is where voters register when they get in, there are only 664 voters in the poll pad. And so, I thought to myself that, hey, this is probably a problem with the poll pad software or something of that nature. But as I started looking at the data that was available in the absentee file, history file, and voter files for multiple time frames, everything matches up. Not 100%. There may be 667 or 666 or 669 or something like that, but they're nowhere near 981. So where did those ballots come from? All I want is to be investigated. I'm not giving an answer for it, but there needs to be a serious investigation into what happened in Hickory Flat.
Right. And just to be clear, this is because I believe voting cut off at 7 p.m. And so this is not the number of voters, but this is because you were including all the counties. So in Cherokee just happened to be at that chunk, but if you double it's 664, just in case someone's wondering. But yeah, you found something somewhat similar in another county as well.
Yeah, the other county was Air Acres, and it wasn't the in-person election day that had an issue, but it was the hand-marked ballots, the absentee by mail ballots. So in the original votes cast versus the recount votes cast, there was a difference of 1 vote between the two. But if you query the voter files, there were 6 electronic and 688 mailed for a total of 694 hand-marked ballots, or hand-marked, voters that should have submitted hand-marked ballots, for a difference of roughly 120 more ballots in Air Acres than there were voters voting with hand-marked ballots.
Interesting. And now we got double scanned, which was also something really interesting because that affects the actual count. So just to be clear, with scanning, scanning just means they become images, but counting is what affects the actual like outcome, right? So
exactly,
it should be scanned, and that's like for public record and for what type of forensic what you're doing. So I'm glad that someone's using it. And then but that one should not necessarily be affecting the other, right? Like one's for a record keeping, not to be impacting the overall.
Yes. So we found 125 duplicates in Cherokee, but those were 125 scanned ballots, not 125 counted ballots. The counted ballots that we found were 50 of those, and all those ballots were in one batch. There was one that was a duplicate scan and count in Arnold Mill, and 49 that were duplicate scans and counted in Woodstock, for a total of 50 counted ballots. Looking at the 25% that we can really analyze. I mean, we can do some stuff with the BMDs, but mostly it's with the hand count. But even if the duplicates were removed, the 125 or the 50 that were removed, let's say they were removed in the recount, which they were. These 50 were removed. That fixes the president or the POTUS race, because that's all they were looking at. But the 50 ballots counted for everything else up and down the board in the original count. So those duplicates stand as part of the official record, or these double scans and double counts stand as part of the final vote record for everything other than the POTUS race.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really key that you mentioned before, but I think it's worth reiterating that you only can really check a quarter of everything. So we don't know about the other 75%.
Correct.
So
Correct.
It could be more than this, but it's very likely.
Right. Now this is a problem. I mean, you've heard the term, that the cover up is worse than the crime. Well, I don't know if it was a crime. I mean, I think likely what happened is somebody just accidentally scanned in 50 ballots twice. And that was on election night. So you had batch 33 and 95 and on tabulator 50 that were double scanned, double counted ballots in election night. Now go over to the ballot images from the recount, and now all of a sudden those 50 duplicate images are gone, which is the way it should be, right? So you didn't make the same mistake twice. That's great. But what I found was 50 new ballots, 49 in Woodstock, 1 in Arnold Mill, in a single batch that showed up in the recount that was not there in the original count. Now, if it had been, 50 new ballots that were other precincts or what have you, I wouldn't think as much about it. I would just think, well, they accidentally scanned the wrong batch. But for that to be the case, they would have had to accidentally scan the wrong batch, and there had to be 2 batches, that were 49 ballots in Woodstock, 1 in Arnold Mill. So it looks, I can't say a certainty. I mean, I'd like an investigation into it, but it absolutely looks to me like somebody created 50 ballots and injected it into the system in order to match on the recount the ballots that they had in the original count. Can't say it for certain, but that's what it looks like.
So what you're saying though is basically the new ballots, in other words, the 50 in there, if it was from another county, it should be offset somewhere else, is really what you're saying. So really, there's kind of like a lack of integrity kind of within the original scan, which is the double count, right? That's a goof. But then kind of like you're saying, when they're recounting it, that also doesn't match. So either it should be consistent, like the double counted on both, like okay, at least it's the same mistake twice, or your
count should be 50 less.
Right, or the count should be 50 less, is what I was going to say. Or even if they did that, they should be offset in another county, or I'm not giving another county, another precinct to balance out. Like, oh, okay, that was actually in some other county, and that would explain it. But you didn't see anything like that. There was no similar pattern. It was just like, where did these come from? You couldn't find it. These were strays, also, like you said. So, okay, and these are perfect examples right here. What you saw. This was the double counted and double scanned ballot example, right? This is what you were kind of showing about looking at these. Do we lose them? Uh-oh. Hold on, guys. Did I lose you or did I lose myself? Uh-oh, Troy froze. Oh, no. Okay, hold on. Let's get Troy back. Is everyone else? Well, everyone's out here. I see Matt on. Let's see. Hold on. Let me just check him. Well, I could walk you through the rest of it, but I think you popped out, so he's going to have to hop back in. Yeah, Troy froze. Yep. Thanks, Troy. And thanks, Ray. I see you. I had to pop out of full screen because I didn't know what happened. Julie, let's get him back in. Let me just check somewhere quickly.
He hasn't tried to log back in, period. I will admit him as I get the ding, period.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. As you can see, tech issues do happen too. And we're already at the halfway point, so I'll let him know. Mm-hmm. Is Troy back in by chance, or is he trying to get back in, Julie? Okay.
No, he hasn't hit the doorbell yet.
He's back.
He's back. Okay.
Okay, good.
Hey, Troy, just heads up, we have about 30 minutes left, so we'd like to see if we can. I'll try to
speed it up. I'll speed it up. Cool. Okay, so if you get back to the
fast forwarding. Okay, right here. Yep.
So this is an example of the duplicate ballots. If you go to seeforyourself.org, or excuse me, seeforyourself.us:8080, you'll be able to see all the ballots in detail and zoom in on them. But this is just an example of one of those ballots that was double scanned and counted. So here's how, the way that I knew that it was, that there was a problem, is because I knew there was 49 hand-marked duplicates in Woodstock precinct, but the SOVC was 5209, and then I looked at the SOVC for the recount, it was also 5209. And so I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense then, because they shouldn't have duplicates or double scanned in both of them. And that was kind of the tag that had me go in there and look at the BCIs to compare them and see what happened there. And that's when I found there were 50 new ballots in the recount. And then the next slide is the other ballot for Arnold Mill. Same thing. The SOVCs matched. There definitely was an extra ballot that was made up. It looked almost identical, except that there was 2 votes that were included on the amendments at the end of the ballot. But you could tell they were filled in. It was not the same ballot. The bubbles didn't look the same.
The analogy I made earlier with you, Troy, was that this is basically saying on the register, it does seem to balance out if you're looking at like the cash register, receipts, right? But it's like, and then you look closer and say, oh, you realize this is like a counterfeit bill,
yes,
or something, right?
Yes.
You realize this, or like this is miscounted. Like it seems to be abstractly, but then you look deeper, like, wait, this doesn't match up. This is either being forced to add, or this was miscounted, or something.
Yeah, correct. And those are clues. Like if I'm scanning and I find I find duplicates, then I start looking at the SOVCs and see, okay, well, did they count or not? And then comparing them to the recount. Unfortunately, we don't have ballots for MC1 and MC2 for most counties. So I'm fortunate, being here in Cherokee, that my county had them. So I was able to look at them and get into more detail. Now, this one here was concerning, because it kind of goes to the issue of what's going on that I'm not able to see. What are people doing in these ballot counting places? Because I found this ballot while I was trying to do comparisons, and it clearly shows the same ballot from the original count to the recount, but sometime in between, somebody marked another bubble on there.
Yeah, overvote for Donald Trump, and it's a machine. I mean, it's a perfect bubble. It's not a human marked one.
It looks like a machine. I mean, I can't. I don't know about from the image quality if I can really tell that or not, but it certainly looks like a machine printed bubble.
It's definitely the same one. It's the same hand up at the top. You see everything looks like we see. So where did that come from?
So I've sent in open records requests to the director of elections here and to the clerk of courts, trying to find any kind of log that would say, hey, during the recount we went back and looked at the original, and we found that it had the 2. So I don't know what the reasoning is.
Right. So there's no record. There's no.
Yeah, there should be a record. If you're going to make changes to somebody's ballot, there needs to be some sort of audit trail for it.
Right. And that's sort of what you saw here in the stray ballots, where you saw like
yes. So across the county, there was a gross difference of 274 ballots between the election night and the recount. So those ballot populations were different by 274. Now, I would expect it to be different with the duplicates removed, and I see that the duplicates are removed in the omitted column. If you look at the column that has the duplicates, it's pretty well reflective of that in the duplicates in the omitted column, which is expected. But there's a bunch of added ballots too. Now, I think Air Acres, the 50 that they added, I believe that they had accidentally not included those images in MC1, and they did include them in MC2. So, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that one. But, you know, the Woodstock one, duplicates being omitted and then 49 being added for, you know, net change of 98. I mean, that's an issue. And also, why all these other ones are showing up, it doesn't make sense to me.
And again, there's no record. So it's like, if there, maybe it's explanation, but you don't know why.
I don't know why. And we kind of talked about this earlier, and we can go past it, because just knowing that the duplicates, when they are counted, they still stand as counted in the original count.
Right. The only thing that was changed was effectively in the presidential, not the non-ballot stuff. So that's definitely something to be looked at. And then you also mentioned inconsistent scanner results. This was something I thought was interesting too. Yes. And
this is so this typically what we're seeing is if somebody uses a check mark or a line to mark the ballot, is that the scanning software looks at it and measures what's called the mark density to see, you know, should this vote in this contest count. And so one was 16 and it came back as a blank contest. The other was 17. It came back as a vote for Kelly Loeffler. This is one example. I mean, there's many of them out there, but anyway, the problem is that if you put the same ballot through the same scanners multiple times, you should not be getting a different result.
It's the same ballot because it has ballot ID, but the tabulators in the scanners and batches are different. So in case people think, oh, they're different, like, no, it's the scanner that's different. It's not the ballot. So
the ballot's the same. It's the same ballot.
Right. Just in case someone tries to shoot that down. So let's go through the main concerns that you found and you presented to. Double counted ballots, I mean, mistakes happen. I don't expect perfection. People try hard. I think they're just doing the best they can. But, double counted ballots, we need to have a way to catch those double scans before they go into the tallies. There's an apparent physical or electronic replacement of double counted ballots with new unique ballots. I don't know. Like I say, I don't. All I know is what happened. I don't know how or why or who. Computer printed ballots that are not currently reviewable. All this 75% of the ballot population that I'm mostly blind to, and then ballot images that don't match the SOVC on the original count is another one. Is that if you say you got 100 votes, but yet you only have 90 ballots, I mean that's kind of a problem. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So my request to the board was to require a precinct reconciliation of the ballots cast and counted, to implement some sort of post-voter numerical accounting mark. I mean, it doesn't have to be numerical even, just something to make the ballots unique. And then I asked that they request a redacted version of the Haldeman security port. To me, it's just unconscionable that people don't have their hands on that thing. I mean, if Haldeman could figure it out, I assure you, a foreign government figured out it a long time ago. So I don't know who they're trying to protect, but they need to get that. We need to get that thing released and address. If there's anything that needs addressing, I don't know. But if there is anything that needs to be addressed, we need to get some mitigations in place. And then I asked for a formal investigation into the topics that I covered. And then I asked for a review for the next at the next board meeting.
Right. And so that was the presentation. This is how it went down. This is what they sent you.
So basically they said, we already do reconciliation. And I'm like, well, if you do reconciliation, then how did you not reconcile out these 300, extra ballots? But they, basically they said, yep, we got that covered. Well, they may have it covered on paper, but in practicality, it's not getting done correctly.
Right. They were looking at those receipts. Like I said, they were looking at the details like you were, it sounds like.
Exactly. I mean, it matched the ballot recap sheets, but didn't match any of the electronic stuff. As far as an accounting mark, basically said it's going to take too much time. It's too hard to do. We have to do it this way. And in my mind, it's if there's a problem, then you need to you need to address it. Not just say it's too hard.
He always says,
so if the laws say one thing, let's get the laws changed and fix the problem.
It's like he knows I'm
right. And they said they would go from the state election board, so that might be somewhere next to go for if they're going to not deal with that.
Yeah. Yep. And then as far as an investigation, basically they said it's we don't have the expertise to do it. You're going to have to go talk to the Secretary of State. So, it was kind of like I would have at least had a little more respect in this response if they had said, "Yep, that this sounds like it could be an issue. We will head this up to the Secretary of State and say that we want it done," instead of putting the onus on me to get the Secretary of State to pay attention. To me, it's just they're just shirking their responsibilities. I don't know why that is, but it's absurd that a citizen brings up some complaints that they can't have the answers to, and they say, "Well, it's too hard we can't figure it out. We're not, we don't have the expertise. Go talk to somebody else."
And the makeup of that board was actually predominantly Republican, right?
Yes, I believe it is. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I know we have about 15 minutes left, and then we're going to go into Cobb County. There was one. Let's see if would you like to continue? Because I know you have a couple more slides.
Well, if we only have 15 minutes, I mean, we can just talk about things, or I can cover some things that I found in Cobb. It's however you'd like to do it.
Let me see how we're doing for questions. Sorry, I'm kind of hopping out both, guys. So just give me a second. For a lot of. Oh, okay, wait. I see a lot of. I'm trying to see if I could field some questions here. I do apologize. It looks like there's some questions here that I will see if I can ask. It says ballots do not have a unique number. I believe they do, but maybe I'm mistaken on that one.
No, the unique number is just no. There's nothing unique about the ballot itself.
I mean, like I think I'm not sure if Tom Zizi's asking like on the ballot. Like I think when it's in like the batch. Or it's scanned through, but in itself is not like it's in a reference. It's a location, but it's not like the ballot itself is not marked. That's what you're suggesting for like debates, right? Like with everything like that to have.
Yeah, there's nothing that would differentiate on an image. Well, to an expert, there's something to differentiate an image between a ballot scanned in and a Xerox copy. I mean, an expert would have figured that out. But theoretically, if you could have a good enough copy of it, there would be no way to tell the difference.
Okay. It's Philip Stark's asking, that's a long question. Application that logged voter participation failed in early voting, if I recall correctly. There should have been paper records of participation, voter signatures from which the correct participation history would be recovered. Does the Secretary of State claim that was done? Looks like Maryland responded to that, says no, the Secretary of State did not claim that. So that answers that question. Thanks, Maryland. Appreciate you chiming in. Troy said you presented this to the Cherokee Board of Elections, and was there an explanation for the ballots? No, there was not, Eileen, unless I'm mistaken. Okay.
No, I got no explanation for it. I got a nod and a smile.
Yeah, they pretty much just punted it. I'm just trying to skim through these and see if anything gets mixed. I think that's it for questions. You know what? I want to see if we can continue the remainder of this. Do you think we've got enough time to do that? I'd be happy to.
Cobb. I don't have near the detailed information in Cobb that I do on.
Okay, so let me show the rest of that real quickly. We'll have to go a little quicker on this one. I do apologize, guys, but okay. So thanks y'all for that. Just give me a second. So one thing I did think was interesting about Cobb that you're going to go into, you looked at one thing here I thought was interesting is that you were able to determine very few of the BMD ones that were write-ins, because you can't tell by the QR codes, but you can tell like if everything else is the same, and the fact that there's a write-in is pretty rare to have that exact combination. That was one.
Well, it's not rare, to have them the same, or maybe even with the same write-in. But what is rare is to find 399 or 400 ballots scanned in a row in two different batches that are identical.
The whole batch.
And so that's the one thing that we can find is if things are scanned in serially and there's no shuffling of ballots going on. And I recognize that, you know, a scanner can jam or something like that, and you do and maybe you change the ballots around a little bit. But if you go to the next slide, you know, there was a bunch of them in Baker in MC2, and it's important to know we didn't even have MC1 ballots for Cobb. They had destroyed those. So we found these in the recount, which was a long list of ballots that were identical between. They were actually in 3 batches. One batch, you know, for the original, and then spread across 2 batches on the double scan. Go to the next one. So what makes it difficult, if it's a serial duplicate, then we can find some of the duplicate ballots. But what makes it really tough is when the ballots are in different orders. And we found ballots in different orders, you know, ranging from, hey, you got these 10 ballots at the end instead of the front, to the ballots are all over the place with no rhyme or reason. It's like they threw the ballots out on the floor and then stacked them up again. It just doesn't make any sense. We have made some gains in order to figure out how to determine if they're duplicates, but it would be a whole lot easier if they had some sort of unique identifier on the ballots, so we could really tell if it's a duplicate or if it's just somebody voting the same way twice.
Definitely seems like it would be easy to hide something if you were trying to hide something with that. I would imagine more issues in that than in the serials.
Certainly. If it's shuffled, it's much more difficult. Yeah, we already covered that on the.
And this is
So the Baker precinct, 340 duplicates. Now, what's interesting about Baker, and like I said, I'm nowhere near down the path on Cobb as I was on Cherokee, but if you have 339 duplicates, and so with those double scans, nobody voted those double scans, right? So if nobody voted those double scans, then theoretically, you should have 339 or 340 fewer voters that are registered as voting. But that's not what we see in Baker.
Right.
I've got 3,384 ballot images, 339 or 340 of which are duplicates or double scans, and yet I have 3,372 voters that show as having voted. So where did their votes go?
Mm-hmm. Right. There's no record of it. So there's more ballots than your voters, like you said.
Yeah.
This is kind of similar to what you found.
Similar to Woodstock. Like I said, this is across, I don't know if I can't say it's across all counties, but it's across a heck of a lot of them. And so in the same way that we found those things in Woodstock, we found the same thing in Cobb.
694. Oh. And then, so we got 427, and some of these, actually, you didn't even include everything, too. There's one over here that's a little around, looks like probably 25. But so, and again, even if you stacked all these up, that would add up to quite a bit as well. I mean, you're probably looking at 400, 500, 600 altogether.
Yeah, but I think it's important, looking at that graph, it's the same type of thing, that we see in Woodstock, is it's one or two precincts that are, the bulk of the problem. It's not all across the county. I mean, you're going to have errors. I mean, I'd like perfection, but whenever people are involved, if I was involved, it wouldn't be perfect. So I don't expect other people to make things perfect, but we got to do better than the way it's being done.
Right. Yeah. 15% is pretty high.
Yeah. So these are just details like we've seen, like I showed in the Woodstock precinct about how the votes match up.
And this is emailed out as well. I know, sorry for this in the interest of time, but this last page I think is good because I think this kind of gets into your ask and kind of how you went about doing this. I know it wasn't just you; it was a few people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well. Several people on this WebEx actually, or on this Google Meet. So I mean, there was open records requests, getting ballot images, pulling the voter files together, the statements of votes cast. Ballot recap sheets, the number list of voters. I found out. I've been learning so much about elections. It's not my full-time job, so I'm picking this stuff up as I go and discovering, like I didn't learn about recap sheets until just several weeks ago. You have to convert those images over into text. So you have a collection phase, a data transition phase, and then you can start doing some analysis. And then once you come up with some findings, then it's like, okay, well, what do you do with it? I don't want to just sit around and explore my belly button. I mean, what are we going to do about the things that we find? And so then it's important to socialize it. And I took my complaints to the County Board of Elections, talked to the sheriff, talked to the marshals, talked to the district attorney, to the clerk of courts, and everybody, nobody. I mean, they're like, it's not my job. And it was really disconcerting that I couldn't find anybody in Cherokee County to address a Cherokee County problem.
How long did it take you to collect all the way through analyze? I'm not you, but like how long are you and the people who worked on this ballpark? Like,
well, I was kind of a Johnny come lately. The group that was out there working on it had already done a large amount of the legwork up front. So I came there at the right time because they had generated the type of data that I could then use that would leverage my expertise. So I don't know what I would have offered to the group, if I'd come in much earlier.
Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time to explain everything here. I know we only have about perhaps 5 minutes left. I think I'm not sure if we started exactly at 8:30 your time, but close to that. I'm going to go check and see if there's any other questions. But is there anything you want to ask of us that those of us that are paying attention and curious about this data? Is there anything that we'd like to?
There is actually. I mean, to me, this is a problem to me personally here in Cherokee County, and I think that the boards and whatnot in Cherokee are supposedly accounted to the citizens of Cherokee, and so if there's somebody who's a citizen in another county that would like to address this issue in your county, that can spearhead it, I can help you with the data, but I need people throughout Georgia to pick up the ball and run with this locally in their county. I could help give them some guidance about what I found, and how they may want to do that. But we need to attack this, organically at the county level.
And your goal in this, I'm sure we'll get some critics who are trying to say you're trying to overturn or whatever, and that's not your goal. Your goal here is to really just improve election integrity and understand. This is ours as well. Like, why did this happen, and why are there no receipts, or why are the elected officials not able to explain? I understand that they don't know everything, but there should be some reference, or like, oh, here's this guidebook that we use or something like that, and they were just punching it around and not really wanting to deal with it. Did you find that you were dismissed, pretty much like they kind of ignore you for a long time, or did you what was the process like?
Yeah. Well, it's like when the director, the director here in Cherokee, she has been helpful. I don't know that the board has done anything. I don't. It seems like they're just delegating work to her. I'm not really sure, but the only one who paid any attention to any of this is the director of elections, in my opinion. She at least showed some interest and was. She was just happy that somebody brought real evidence to her, as opposed to, theories where you don't have any receipts to back it up.
Hey, Ian, you're on mute.
Yeah.
No one can read lips, apparently. So I guess they should definitely give a chance to, if they're interested in helping and you're interested in working in Georgia, but obviously like this could apply to multiple states, really, like the premise is the same, but you're focusing primarily on Georgia, correct, Troy?
Yeah, well, that's where I have all the data. Okay,
cool. So if you know someone in Georgia who would be interested in this, they should definitely reach out to you, and you can perhaps put them in touch with that group that's working on integrity. And if anyone on this call is interested in volunteering, we definitely have opportunities in Georgia. We just announced the Patriotic Souls to the Polls last week, which is we're going to be registering people in overlooked counties, traditionally more conservative, that are not getting the same treatment that the larger counties are. So we're trying to make it an even playing field. So hoping to register another 120,000 or so voters over the next year and have them vote on Sundays. So we've already done that with a few counties already. So if you want to check out some of our work, go to lookaheadamerica.org/volunteer or lookaheadamerica.org/lead. If you'd like to be a team lead, we have a fantastic team lead. Her name's Jen, but we could always use more help. And I think that's really it. Troy, is there anything else that people, is there one takeaway that people should get out of this in terms of what they can do as a citizen, or, something that you would like to see done, whether in this state or other states, and just replicating that, that you'd like to see more of?
I think the ball is already rolling. I think the problem is just apathy, and I'm guilty of it, but this is, our country depends on voting, and it depends on accuracy. I don't want my vote to count any more than anybody else's, and I don't want anybody else's vote to count any more than mine. And in order to do that, we just have to be involved.
Ian, I just wanted a quick add, if you don't mind.
Sure, we got, I think, a minute, so real quick.
Real quick. So, I was involved in the initiation of a lot of this stuff. So, I was doing a lot of personal research, and I found through my research people doing things in parallel to what I was doing. And I said, well, we just got to get everybody together. And really, where the magic happened was getting passionate people together and collaborating. And it was that was the magic sauce. And it was totally a team effort. None of us could have done it on our own, as far as what we were able to produce, as far as outputs from the data. The people. It was just really, really heartening to see what we could produce with just relatively small group of people who were just very passionate about getting to the truth. And so thank you for everybody who's on this call who was involved in that, and yourself included, Ian, and then what you guys are doing with Look Ahead America. I think that's, people want to help, they just don't know how, and everyone has their own skill sets. So and one of the blockages that I've encountered, I'm a data analyst primarily, and I'm not an election expert. So we were pulling data and we were finding things like, for example, there was only even numbers on the timestamps for some of the modification times. And we were like, well, that's odd. But it turns out that ended up being a ramification of being stored on a flash drive. It's just one of the quirks of storing data on a flash drive. It evens out the timestamps on the modification times. So it ended up being innocuous, but it's something that appears to be that could appear to be manipulative if we didn't understand it. So what we lack is somebody who can look at the data, the findings that we have, and say, yes, this is normal, or no, this is not normal. That's what where we lack right now.
Well, that's what we're doing with getting volunteers. I just put some links up if you would like to join, and you can also reach out to Troy, and perhaps, I guess, they'll vet you to see, how serious and how good you are, and where we can put you to use. But we could use you and Look Ahead, as well as we could use you. Troy could, and his group could also vet you out. I think that's it for our time. So I probably have to end this call pretty soon. And thanks everyone for making it on such short notice and your patience. We'll be emailing this out and posting on the website tomorrow, I believe. So thank you again, Troy. Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming and packing a ton of there in 1 hour, actually a little less. So have a good night, everybody. Thanks again. And we'll be in touch, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Y'all take care.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks, Ian.